In the city of Veyr, the wealthy feared death less than they feared being forgotten. Their statues stood in public squares. Their names were carved into bridges, mausoleums, and cathedral pillars. Poets were paid to preserve their triumphs, while historians were threatened into omitting their failures. Yet every monument eventually cracked. Every book became dust. Every name, no matter how loudly proclaimed, was destined to vanish from the tongues of the living. Dr. Cael Ormiran believed memory itself was the only true soul. He had spent his youth studying the damaged minds of soldiers who returned from the border wars. Some had forgotten the faces of their children. Others remembered battles that had never occurred. A few spoke in the voices of dead comrades, repeating private confessions no living person should have known. Cael concluded that memory was not housed entirely within the flesh. It clung to the mind like light upon glass. And light, he reasoned, could be captured. Beneath the Royal Institute of Physic and Philosophy, he constructed a chamber lined with black mirrors. Copper wires descended from the ceiling like the roots of an inverted tree. At the chamber's center stood a narrow surgical chair, above which hung a crystal vessel filled with pale liquid. His first experiments were performed upon condemned criminals. Cael placed silver needles behind their eyes and asked them to remember a childhood home, a mother's voice, the first person they had killed. As the memories surfaced, the crystal vessel brightened. When the condemned were removed from the chair, they remained alive but hollow. They could speak, eat, and obey simple instructions, yet they no longer knew their own names. Inside the vessel, whispers began. Cael had proven that a mind could be extracted, but he had not yet learned what should contain it. Queen Elira Voss had ruled Veyr for 43 years. By the end of the 44th, a wasting sickness had reduced her to a figure of silk, bone, and rage. Physicians failed her. Priests offered promises she considered insulting. Alchemists brought potions that prolonged her agony while doing nothing to stop the approaching dark. Then she summoned Cael Ormiran. He entered her private chamber, carrying the crystal vessel beneath a velvet cloth.
I am told,
the queen whispered,
that you can preserve what death consumes.
Not the body.
Cael replied.
The body has always disappointed me.
Her eyes remained sharp, despite the sickness.
I want my judgment preserved, my knowledge, my instincts. Every betrayal I uncovered and every lie I recognized before it was spoken.
Cael warned her that memory was not a collection of pages that could be removed and neatly bound. The mind was a living architecture. Take one chamber and the others might collapse.
Then take all of it,
she said. The queen commissioned the greatest jewelers, artificers, and anatomists in Veyr to create a vessel small enough to be worn and strong enough to contain a sovereign consciousness. They forged an amulet from grave silver black crystal, and a single piece of polished bone taken from the skull of Veyr's first king. At its center rested a dark, oval stone veined with shifting threads of light. Around it coiled 8 silver prongs, resembling fingers pressed against a closed eye. Cael named it the Reliquary of the Hollowed Mind. The queen rejected the name.
Nothing will be hollowed,
she said.
I will remain.
On the night of the extraction, lightning rolled across a cloudless sky. The queen was secured to Cael's chair. The amulet rested over her heart. Silver needles entered her skull, and the black mirrors filled with reflections that did not belong to the room. For 9 hours she screamed. By dawn, her body was alive but empty. The amulet was awake. The queen's eldest son, Arven, inherited the throne. He also inherited the amulet. At first, he wore it only during council meetings. Whenever a minister lied, the stone grew warm. Whenever a general concealed fear, a woman's voice whispered from within the metal. When Arven faced a difficult judgment, his dead mother's memories unfolded behind his eyes. He saw negotiations he had never attended. He remembered assassins he had never met. He knew the secret passages beneath foreign palaces, and the weaknesses of rulers who believed those weaknesses safely buried. Under the guidance of the Reliquary, Arven crushed a rebellion without losing a single loyal soldier. He exposed a conspiracy among the merchant houses. He negotiated a peace treaty by reciting the opposing king's childhood shame word for word. The court called him brilliant. Arven knew better. Each victory belonged to the woman round his neck. Soon, he could no longer remove the amulet. When he tried, his thoughts became uncertain and slow. Decisions that once seemed obvious dissolved into endless possibilities. He began hearing his mother, even when the stone was locked inside a lead-lined chest.
You are softer than I was. You hesitate because you are weak. Put me on.
He obeyed. The longer Arven wore the reliquary, the more the boundaries between their minds eroded. He developed his mother's hatred of roses. He began signing decrees in her handwriting. He called elderly courtiers by childhood nicknames known only to the dead queen one morning. He looked into a mirror and saw her expression upon his face, not reflected, remembered. Arven returned to Cael in secret.
Take her out of me,
the king demanded. Cael examined the amulet and found that the impossible had occurred. The queen's consciousness was no longer merely contained within the stone. It had grown. It had woven itself through Arven's memories, feeding upon his experiences and incorporating them into itself. The reliquary had not preserved a mind. It had created hunger. Cael attempted to draw the queen's consciousness back into the extraction chamber. The black mirrors ignited with visions, and the stone released a sound like 1,000 people inhaling at once. Then the reliquary reached through the apparatus. It took the minds of Cael's assistants in a single pulse. 6 men and women collapsed around the chamber, their bodies twitching, their eyes emptied of recognition. Their memories poured into the amulet as streaks of blue-white light. Arven staggered beneath the sudden weight of them. He remembered 6 childhoods, 6 first loves, 6 different versions of Cael. He recalled raising children who were not his, burying parents he had never known, and studying disciplines he had never learned. The queen's voice laughed through all of them.
Why preserve one mind when so many are wasted?
Arven fled. Cael remained among the hollow bodies, staring at the machine he had created. For the first time, he understood the true nature of his invention. The reliquary did not merely store memory. It extracted identity, stripped it of ownership, and gave it to whoever wore the chain. Knowledge without experience, love without relationship, grief without loss, a lifetime stolen in an instant. And beneath every stolen mind, the queen grew stronger. Arven began using prisoners to satisfy the reliquary. At first he chose murderers, traitors, and spies. He told himself their knowledge was necessary for the safety of the kingdom. A captured assassin gave him the names of foreign agents. A smuggler revealed every hidden route through the Eastern Mountains. A disgraced priest surrendered decades of forbidden theology. Each extraction left behind a breathing shell. Each memory entered the king. Soon, necessity became appetite. Arven discovered that stolen memories carried sensations more vivid than dreams. He could relive a sailor's first glimpse of the open sea, or feel the breathless terror of a thief escaping across moonlit rooftops. He could experience the devotion of another man's marriage and the heartbreak of another woman's betrayal. His own life began to seem colorless by comparison. The dungeons filled. Artists vanished from their studios. Scholars disappeared from lecture halls. Veterans were taken from their families because the king desired their battles. Children with rare talents were quietly delivered to the palace. Arven no longer slept. He wandered the royal corridors, speaking in dozens of voices, arguing with people who existed only within him. At feasts, he answered questions before they were asked. During trials, he recited the memories of the accused and pronounced guilt before testimony began. The people began calling him the all-knowing king. They did not know that Arven's original mind was drowning. Deep within the vast multitude contained by the reliquary, he still remembered who he had once been. But the memory had become small. A frightened young prince trapped beneath a mountain of stolen lives. And above them all sat Queen Elira Voss, enthroned in the center of his thoughts. The Hollowed did not die. They were abandoned in hospitals, prisons, and monastery cellars. They could not speak their names or recognize their loved ones, but traces remained within them. A gesture, a melody, a fear of darkness, a hand reaching for someone no longer remembered. Cael gathered them. For years he had hidden beneath the ruined districts of Veyr, studying the victims of his invention. He discovered that extraction was never perfect. A mind left residue in the flesh, just as roots remained after a tree was torn from the earth. Using sound, scent, and pain, he awakened fragments. A former soldier remembered how to hold a sword. A glassmaker remembered fire. A mother remembered that she had once loved someone, though she could not recall whom. They became known as the Forgotten. They followed Cael, not because they understood his promises, but because the amulet's presence tormented them. Whenever Arven passed through the city, every hollowed victim turned toward the palace at once. Something inside them knew where their stolen selves had gone. Cael forged a weapon from the shattered black mirrors of his laboratory, a narrow blade capable of severing the invisible threads between memory and vessel. His plan was simple: kill the king, break the reliquary, release the stolen minds. But when the Forgotten stormed the palace, Arven was waiting. He knew every corridor they would take, because he possessed the memories of the architects who had designed them. He knew their tactics, because he had extracted the minds of captured rebels. He knew Cael's plan because part of Cael himself already lived within the amulet. The memories stolen from his 6 assistants contained every lecture, argument, and private fear they had shared with him. The rebellion was slaughtered before it reached the throne room. Only Cael survived. Arven ordered him brought forward. Around the king's neck, the black stone opened like an eye.
You wanted immortality.
Arven said. His voice contained the queen, the king, and thousands more. Cael stood before the throne, surrounded by the bodies of the Forgotten.
No,
He answered.
I wanted proof that we were more than dying flesh.
And you found it.
I found proof that a mind without mortality becomes a monster.
The reliquary pulsed. Invisible hooks entered Cael's thoughts. He felt his childhood being pulled from him first, the smell of his father's workshop, the sound of rain on a copper roof, the warmth of his sister's hand. Then came his years of study, his first surgery, his first failure. The moment he realized that memory could be separated from the body, the amulet drank everything. Yet Cael had prepared for this. Hidden beneath his tongue was a sliver of black mirror. As his identity was torn away, he bit down. The glass cut through flesh, and reflection entered the extraction. For the first time, the reliquary was forced to consume not a memory, but an image of itself. The effect was catastrophic. Every consciousness within the stone became aware of every other consciousness. The murdered remembered being their killers. Kings remembered starving in alleys. Children remembered dying as soldiers. Priests remembered the crimes confessed to them as if they had committed each one. The boundaries collapsed. Queen Elira screamed as thousands of stolen minds looked upon her from within. Arven fell from the throne, clawing at the chain. Cael, nearly emptied, seized the mirror blade and struck the amulet. The silver casing split. The black stone cracked. But it did not break. Instead, the reliquary tore itself free from Arven's neck and drove its chain into Cael's chest. It extracted the last thing he still possessed: his regret. The palace was found silent at sunrise. King Arven lay dead beneath the throne. His face bore no expression, and no memory remained within him. not even the instinct to breathe. Cael Ormiran was never found. Neither was the amulet. In the years that followed, stories spread across the ruined kingdom. A battlefield scavenger claimed to have found a silver chain beneath a pile of corpses. After wearing it, he spoke every language of the dead and led an army with the skill of 100 generals. 3 days later, his soldiers discovered him wandering naked through the snow, unable to remember what a human being was. A widow purchased a dark amulet from a traveling merchant. That night, she heard her dead husband's voice and placed the chain around her neck. By morning, she knew every secret he had kept from her. She also spoke with the voices of everyone who had worn it before. A monastery recorded the arrival of a nameless pilgrim whose chest bore a scar shaped like a chain. He warned the monks that the Reliquary was searching for a mind large enough to hold all that it had consumed. When asked how he knew, the pilgrim wept.
"I made it,"
he said. Then he corrected himself.
"We made it."
The monks attempted to seize him, but every lamp in the monastery extinguished at once. In the darkness, they heard thousands of people whispering through a single mouth. By dawn, the pilgrim was gone. Only the amulet remained upon the altar. Its cracked black stone had repaired itself. 8 silver fingers surrounded its center, no longer holding the eye closed, but pulling it open. The eldest monk ordered the reliquary sealed beneath the monastery and commanded that no one ever wear it. That same night, he dreamed of every life he might have lived, every truth he might have known, every secret death had ever buried. Before sunrise, he descended alone into the vault. The door was found open the next morning. The monk was sitting peacefully against the wall, alive and breathing, but unable to remember his own name. The pedestal before him was empty, and somewhere beyond the monastery walls, beneath the robes of another eager seeker, the reliquary of the hallowed mind continued its long search for someone foolish enough to believe that possessing every memory was the same as possessing wisdom.